everyone, and welcome to The Trek. The Trek is a Civics Unplugged series where community members participate in meaningful discussions on topics that are too often neglected when thinking about building the future. Through prompting questions and provocations, we venture together into complex but important conversations related to building the future and democracy. We understand that this work requires ongoing dialogue, but it's a journey worth trekking through. My name is Madison, and I'm a high school senior from Verdigris, Oklahoma, joined by some of our community members and special guests, which we will get to in a moment. But tonight we are talking about talent. And so we started off the conversation with a word association. So when you see your name, just do a brief introduction and your 1 to 3 words.
Okay. I was kind of hoping I wasn't gonna go first, but hey, all right. Hi, I'm Angel. I'm 18 years old, currently a first year, and I'm based in like DC, Maryland. And I was debating over what my 1 to 3 words should be. So like last time I was here, Madison, you can choose either or. You can either say overrated or overshadowed by privilege, whichever one floats your boat. Yeah, okay.
Okay, I'm Julia. I'm 23 years old and I live in Pennsylvania. I'm gonna go with 2 words. I'm gonna go with inherent as one because some people just have like talents they're born with. Like I can never draw and I can't really be taught to draw. So some people just have those, and as well as, but I'll do hard work as well because I think with experience comes obviously getting better at something, and people can work hard to create talents for themselves.
Hi, I'm Rose. I'm a junior in high school, currently in Columbus, Ohio. I was going to also say something very similar. I was going to say innate, like some very similar to inherent, that because even though I don't think that necessarily talents are always just something that you have to be like that you have already and that you don't work for at all, like that is the association I have with the word talent.
Hi guys, I'm Josiah Caterino. I'm a senior at Verdigris High School, and I associate 3 words with talent would be luck, genetics, and arbitrary. My reasoning for this is because you can be born with talents inherently, as you guys have previously mentioned. It's based on chance, it's not based on reason, thus it's arbitrary.
Hey everyone, my name is Maryam. I'm a senior from the suburbs of Chicago, and pretty much along the lines of what everyone else has already said about talent, but my word would be overhyped because I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, I'm just not talented, so I can't really get involved, when really it's not necessary to like have an inherent talent, but like hard work will beat talent any day, but I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more later on in the conversation.
All right, I think that's me, right? Hey guys, I'm Tyler. Pretty much far removed from college. Pretty much like, you know, a lot ahead of them than you guys here. But it's really a pleasure to meet you guys. I mean, Gary has spoken so much about you, and I was really excited to meet you all. My word for talent would be value. As long as you're able, and the reason why I choose that, as long as you're able to provide value to anyone, you have a talent for something. Whether that's listening, whether that's like financial advice, whether that's taking care of someone, that's a talent because you're adding value.
Hey everyone, Pratap, Penumalli. It's nice to meet you all. I am from the Boston area originally and down in Miami right now, chasing endless summer. And I would say, oh, actually, and what I do is I help people build their companies, mostly tech-enabled startups from scratch. So for talent, yeah, I have a few different thoughts on it, but I'll go with something a little bit different, which is my 3 words would be skill meets purpose. And the reason I say that is because to think about talent in a vacuum, sometimes, yeah, you think it's just magic, but a lot of times talent reveals itself when your underlying skills come in line and in tune with your purpose.
right in line with that, mine are experiences reveal them, or talents, or to say experiences reveal talents. So I think a lot of people think that they're untalented because they just haven't tried a lot of stuff, quite frankly.
Yeah, mine's along the lines of what other people have been saying. So I'm gonna say worthless without work. One of my favorite quotes. It's pretty cheesy, but it's like hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. I've just seen so many spaces when people have a natural aptitude to do certain things, but they obviously aren't willing to put in the work. And so I think it's pretty worthless if you can't do that. So yeah, that's the word association. And now we get into the actual conversation. So if anyone has a question or a provocation they want to pose to everyone, go ahead. No one?
I actually have an image that I might add, which is the first time we'll have ever done that. So Pratap and Tyler, you're getting something special.
See it.
Yeah.
So this is my provocation, this image. All right.
I've seen that picture before.
I
It's gotta be.
Yeah, I think I've never seen this image before, but I feel like seeing it right now encapsulates what I originally thought of when I think of talent, because I guess that's just the way my mind works. Definitely brings up, or definitely encourages us to have a conversation about meritocracy, and I guess how the idea of innate talent / hard work / I guess bootstrap theory is embedded into like the very fabric of our society. Like I said before, I feel like talent, I agree with everything that's been said, but I definitely think that talent is in some spaces and is pretty frequently overshadowed by privilege. I think everyone is born with an innate talent, regardless of what it might be, but the circumstances that you're put into depends, or those circumstances decide whether or not those talents are able to flourish, or if they, I guess, dwindle away into meaninglessness. But yeah.
I agree with Angel. With the talent being overshadowed by privilege. I also think that the picture brings up another point of like what we consider to be talented in our society. Like what gifts are people born with that we value, or what do we not?
To elaborate on Angel's earlier point, I think talent is unfair so much so that it's fair. There's a common term that if life's not fair to everyone, then isn't it in turn fair to everyone? And I think that's an interesting point to think about philosophically, just because I think equality of opportunity is very important in America, to give everyone the chance for their talents to shine. But simultaneously, I think having that chance to shine won't necessarily mean you're going to have equal competition. There's always going to be someone that's more talented than you at a certain activity or a certain hobby that you're interested in. So the idea that equality of opportunity is the same as equality of outcome, I think, are just, two strongly contrasted subjects.
Yeah, I love that. I actually, it's funny, if I had two more words, I was going to say skill meets purpose meets opportunity, right? Because if it's just skill meets purpose, then to the previous points, you'd be leaving out a number of issues related to how we see talent, namely privilege and access to opportunity. It's funny, the example that I'll give, which is now changed, I think, or is in the process of changing, was when I first joined Google. This may not have even been there by the time you joined, Gary. We actually said the word meritocracy a lot. We're like, we're so lucky this place is a meritocracy, and like, the best ideas will win, and that kind of thing. But then, we were like only hiring from certain schools. We were only testing in a case studies in a certain way that didn't promote a lot of different experiences that certainly very talented people could have made very meaningful contributions to a place like that in the early days. So so it was really interesting that as we learned as a company too, we started to slowly, and that journey still continues, to realize that there's so much more to attracting the best talent and the widest range of talent than just thinking in terms of meritocracy or something like that.
I have a provocation I want to pose. So my provocation is, some talent is more valuable than others.
I feel like that's very subjective. I think it would have to depend on the situation and what those around you value, because at the end of the day, talent is only able to be recognized by those around you. You can't necessarily just view it yourself, if that makes sense. Society in general is going to decide what talent is useful and what isn't. If no one in the world liked listening to the piano would have never been created in the first place, because the sound wouldn't have been a desired effect that relaxed people or entertained them. So I think that talents that are more valuable than others just simply depends on who you're around, who's affecting you, and who you look up to. And then furthermore, your environment, to get more specific, socioeconomic would play into that, as well as culture. I think religion as well, which would be a subset of your culture. So I think that is, just not necessarily a bad claim, but not a full claim, if that makes sense.
Yeah, look, coming from the entertainment world, I would agree that some talents are more valuable than others, and it's actually perceived value. So, going back to the word that I assign to talent is value. In the world of entertainment, when we see the word the word talent, we think of artists. We think of anyone that we can bring on to make our platform more valuable to our audience. If our audience is a bunch of Gen Zs, then we want to, and who likes music, we're going to bring on Billie Eilish instead of, let's say, Coldplay, for instance, because our audience perceives more value from Billie Eilish, right? And it doesn't mean Billie Eilish is more talented than Coldplay. It's just that for this audience, there's more value from Billie Eilish. So it's perceived talent or perceived value rather than objective value.
This is a great question because it relates to how some talents are more relevant to the survival of, like, let's say the human race at different points in time, right? So like in the industrial revolution sort of age, like being able to just kind of like tolerate tons of suffering and just like do the same thing again and again, right? Art was arguably a valuable trait. right? But now it's like when computers, AI can do all the sort of repeatable tasks, it's the people that get that might in a previous age be like really bored as a factory worker that are succeeding the most, the entrepreneurial types. So it's important that I think it's important for like people that think that they are in a position or should be in a position to social engineer the direction of like our species, to like not think that they can just that they should or can get rid of certain traits, because that might really harm our ability to survive long term.
On the total other end of the spectrum of social engineering certain traits, I had a question for the group, unless there's more thoughts on this provocation. Madison, what do you think?
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. The question is, I promised Gary that I was going to ask a okay boomer question of our fellows. And so who are the most talented, who is the most talented or one of the most talented creators, either in TikTok or YouTube, that like that comes to mind right away, and why?
For me, it's no one. Honestly, probably, I doubt people would know who this person is. Actually, like a couple people come to mind, but when you mention YouTube, I would say like a lot of in-depth commentary channels, like this girl named Jordan Teresa comes to mind, or this other girl named Tiffany Ferg, because they have what is seemingly a natural aptitude for editing, which is of course probably accelerated or polished by hard work. And they have a very keen ability to communicate very complex ideas, like I guess like cross-temporal ideas, in a way that just makes sense to younger audiences. And they're able to like connect all of these different theories and experiences and real world examples, and design, or I guess create a message, or comment on like contemporary culture. And I think that's a very cool talent, like being able to analyze, being able to synthesize, being able to edit. I'm like so technologically inept, so I very much appreciate people who can do that. Yeah, but I don't think it's as appreciated as it should be.
You just inspired a question. We can stay on this question, but I want to write it. I want this to be written down. How does our story about our talents and other people's talents affect people's ability to realize their talents or cultivate talents? So you said I suck at like tech or whatever. Like I would guess that that's really harming your ability to be good at tech.
Yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy for sure. I don't doubt that at all.
And by the way, like even good at tech, what we've noticed was it's such a wider net than that, right? Like we were talking about hiring content managers and content marketing teams for our startups, and like without a doubt, I didn't want to be like ageist here, but I was like, I would prefer if the folks we hire are like in high school or like in college and not like 5 to 10 years of experience doing like big company marketing, because like the velocity of content, your ability to absorb is just so much better than mine, right? So it's like someone like that is like never actually coded anything in their life, are like amazing at a tech job that we are desperately hiring for already, just because you like know your way around social media content, right? It's almost reframing it.
One creator that comes to mind, and you mentioned, I believe I heard TikTok. I don't know
TikTok for sure. I only said YouTube because I didn't want it to be like just about TikTok, but yeah.
Okay, well, there's this guy. His name's like, I think his name's like Peoria or something like that. I forget the name exactly, but what he's the son of an English teacher, so he's obviously, you know, deals in those like themes and motifs and stuff like that. And the videos he makes are like incredibly he deals with incredibly complex and philosophical views on life and outlooks about what is the meaning of life and if there is a meaning or if we're losing that meaning in life. And he translates them, I apologize, into really simplistic terms through like metaphors. Like there was this one video where he used a game of chess that was switching from chess to Monopoly back to checkers to describe the ups and downs of life and how certain seasons and chapters of your life, you know, can bring different obstacles. And it was just really profound things that he put into, you know, 35-second videos. So it was just, you know, something I think is like deserves to be noteworthy when it comes to creators. And he's pretty big too, like millions of followers and whatnot. So.
When I think of the most talented creators, I just think of my favorite YouTuber who's Best Dressed. That's her like YouTube name. I think she's really big now, but I really like just like her fashion videos, which are not something that you would necessarily think is like the most important talent to have in society necessarily. But like I think she's really talented at like putting together outfits, which is not something I don't know that like something that maybe you could like think about, I don't know, marketing like into a career or whatever. But it's really cool.
This is making me realize that YouTube and just social media in general has really helped people that the gatekeepers didn't think had talents reveal their talents.
To Rose's point, I've seen Best Dressed her videos. I'm not like really a fashion person, but yeah, I agree. She has like really like immaculate content. It's very detailed. But I also like this person named Andrew Kirby. I'll send like his YouTube link. But he does like such a variety of content, whether it's like trying certain people's like morning routines or like diving into like how he beat a dopamine addiction or like stopped doing these unproductive habits or like how he like for a month stopped doing certain things and how it turned out. Just like so detailed in like his research and how he story tells as well. And yeah, I also just appreciate anyone who can edit videos really well. It's a really time consuming task as well as just really, really good.
I'd have to say that Julia and Gen Z Connect is my favorite.
Oh my god.
But also I would just say I also admire a lot of comedians, especially like Conan O'Brien and then like YouTubers like David Dobrik or Emma Chamberlain, because I think people in comedy just have this really unique ability to come off as authentic to so many millions of people. And I think that that's a huge talent, it's a huge superpower. And to be able to connect so many people just by what you're saying and make them feel like this collective emotion and that this collective joy is something that is so admirable to me.
I completely agree, Madison. Like I'm always super impressed by comedians and like especially people like Hassan Minhaj and his show like Patriot Act, which unfortunately canceled, so it's not a thing anymore. But I love that show and it's like I thought that was really cool. And I'll definitely second Best Dressed, Gen Z Connect, and Emma Chamberlain, because I feel like all three of those, including you, Julia, like really connect to their audience and like, yeah, Josiah wrote to Patriot Act. But they really find a way to like connect to their audience, so it feels like you're like talking to them as a friend, not just like as someone filming in their room or things like that. So I really appreciate that about like talented creators, because like if you're able to kind of like get human level connection through a screen, I think it's a skill that not a lot of people can have, and hopefully it's something that keeps on growing as we're like in a more and more digital world.
to expand upon what Madison and Maryam had already talked about with comedians, I think another aspect of a talent that is associated with comedians is the fact that they're able to take risks, and they're willing to take risks in front of hundreds of people to tell jokes that they cannot guarantee that everyone in the audience will understand. They cannot guarantee that, given all the variables that come into people that come from different cultures or countries, and they may grow up in a certain way, they may not understand a certain joke. So they have to create content that they know everyone can relate to and understand. And at the same time, they cannot make it something that you've heard before. It can't be something that's old or already previously well understood. It has to be something new and fresh, meanwhile being relatable and understandable. And I think that's something that transcends just already well-established communication. I think it's just it's special. I think comedians' ability to communicate is special.
I think regarding Gary's question about having our story about our talents affect the way that we engage with certain things and other people as well is obviously so true. I know that I've dealt with that as well, especially with like tech stuff before the fellowship, especially, and being immersed in the digital first community. But and I think that's something that we can all agree exists. But my question to follow it up would be like, what can we do about that problem?
Well, this is kind of answering both of your questions, Madison and Gary, but I feel like when there's a demand for certain skills or talents, like people are going to start filling those gaps. And so I think like people vlogging their lives or like going to Target or doing random things, there would never have been like a demand for that a while ago. But now like that's what people love to see on YouTube or like TikTok. And so like now having like a marketable personality that people can relate with is something that like people can actually like use as a real life job or a skill. So I think just like figuring out what the demand is for certain things is like how you're able to navigate that. But I we fall into like a problem when there's not necessarily demand for something that you're passionate about, because then it might be harder to navigate that.
For sure. On that note, like speaking of talent and demand, I think Joe Rogan is one of the most talented people in the world for many reasons, and he also ushered in a whole like a flood of supply of podcasters, right? So once people saw that there was actual money to be made in podcasting, I mean, what has happened since, right? Millions of podcasts have popped out of nowhere from just in the last few years. And so why do I think he's so successful? His talent is like being the most curious person on the planet, and being humble and very warm and fair to his guests, among other things.
Yeah, I think like sometimes you need to create what you want to be a part of. So like something like that with him, he's just curious. So he's like, I'm gonna put this forth and do that. And then people wouldn't think of that as a talent if he's like saying it in theory, but once you do it, and like you're saying, all these people are flooding to do it now. So people can honestly create talents in just what they're curious about.
Yeah, and I think the people that we perceive as the most talented are the ones that don't even fall into these talent narratives. So like you talk about Joe Rogan, like before Joe Rogan, I don't know if there was like really people had something to compare it to, and we perceive him as the most talented because he brought so many new things to the table. I think that's also applicable for so many other things across industries.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's so interesting to hear someone describe curiosity and just general warmth as a talent. And I feel like those things, at least to me, are like innately known as talents, but for a lot of people, they're very much disregarded in favor of, I guess, talents that are more culturally demanded. like for me personally, I like to say that my parents, or like Nigerians in general, have like the doctor, lawyer, engineer complex, but for my family, it's just like doctor. And I, once again, could definitely be like a self-fulfilled prophecy, but science, STEM, I have to work very, very, very hard in order to achieve what I want to achieve. But when it comes to something like abstract thinking applied to like writing, or just being able to, or having a natural affinity to understand like written, maybe like philosophical content, I feel like that's where my true talents lie, amongst other things, but it's not really recognized by my family because of their doctor complex. So I think if we're going to have people, or if we're going to ensure that people aren't hindered by talent narratives, we definitely need to expand like the lexicon or that's related to talents. Like, what is a talent? It shouldn't be so binary. But I think we really need to start working in to the culture that talents are so extremely diverse, that there is no universal way to describe talent, you know? Yeah, I think talent needs to be deconstructed, and people need to understand that even if you don't fit into what society considers as a talent, society as a whole values as a talent, to use like a really good word that was brought up earlier, that doesn't mean that you don't have the aptitude for anything, or what you do have the aptitude is worthless, you know?
Just to make an incredibly quick and specific point, piggybacking off of what Angel already said, but I think we've been dancing around it as general, as she mentioned, skills in the humanities is, I think, what she was talking about in general, as opposed to skills in STEM. I think that talent in general can't be quantified as how practical it is. I think we have a bad habit of only putting, it kind of like only putting value on talent that can produce something that pushes mankind forward. And although I understand that's important, and that's the entire reason we have things like STEM and whatnot, I think that talent isn't something that can only be quantified as how practical it is and what it can do to help your fellow man, if that makes sense.
But
Yeah.
I think, oh, sorry.
No, you go.
I was going to say, I just think that there's a lot of talent in the humanities that would push people, like society forward, like socially or politically. And I think that's really important. And I think without the social and political progress then the STEM progress we make is kind of meaningless, or doesn't really help a lot of people.
100%. Also, a world without artists, musicians, and a lot of things that we can easily cut out of our curriculums is pretty awful.
Well, how we were talking about earlier, how like curiosity is a talent in its own form. Like so many personality traits are different talents. Like we think today with content creators, like even just putting yourself out there, like having the ability to do that in a way is like a talent that differentiates people. And I also like even the people who have really huge platforms, and like they can take all of those hate comments and like not let that stop them from doing what they're doing. That in itself is like a talent. So that's also something to point out.
Sort of a provocation. People's views of what is can be considered a talent or not will change a lot based on what people with money, when a lot more money is poured into spaces associated with previously overlooked talents. Probably a better way to put that, but
Yes. Conditional yes, but yes, because at the end of the day, we do live in a capitalist society where money and exchange value do govern, I guess, like our very transactions with other human beings. So when people see money being targeted towards a specific area, of course, that area is going to be seen as more valuable, and therefore will be, I don't know, more corroborated in the eyes of the greater society. Yeah, I mean, like, specifically, I'm thinking like even to like my own school, there are so many cool departments that aren't given the resources or as much resources as they should be getting in comparison to other departments. Like there's this really cool major, ethnicity, race, and migration, which is such like, there are multiple talents that you need in order to succeed in that like field of study, right? But instead, other departments get more of the money. And therefore that major isn't, that major, and I guess those subset of skills / talents that are necessary to succeed in that major aren't necessarily, I guess, seen as valuable by the college and I guess therefore by the people who go there. But yeah, money decides everything, really. So I agree, hard agree.
I'd actually beg to differ. I think that people with money decide more so than what the money itself and the flow of money. Because one example that I was looking up, and I was listening to your point, but one example I was looking up kind of midway through was Dana White. He's a successful businessman, and many of you may know he's currently the president of the UFC. I don't remember exactly when he took over. I think 2000, I believe, or somewhere around there. It was an underground league that wasn't very popular, founded in 1993, and then under his leadership, not necessarily his money, but his leadership and his good business decisions, he grew the UFC to a multi-billion-dollar enterprise that is now, everywhere. I don't know if you guys know, but Conor McGregor just fought last week, and I was seeing headline after headline. I couldn't access Google without seeing 4 different stories about it, and I don't even read UFC articles, And I just use that as an example because I think resources can be pushed into talent, but I also think talent can bring about resources as well. I think that people can make things well known. I don't remember anyone talking about Taekwondo before talking about Bruce Lee. Like, he made it popular. Or I may be confusing a mixed martial art, but I believe it was Taekwondo, the Korean art form. I apologize to any of you guys that are really into that. I may be butchering it, but I believe one of those art forms was not very popular before Bruce Lee. And then, furthermore, that allowed for outlet to talent to come after him, aka Jackie Chan. So I think there that's more Hollywood based, but he was still very much into the art form. And I think those are just a few examples of things where talent can also bring about resources and recognition.
Yeah, I love that. And what I'll maybe just kind of echo that / nuance that a little bit is the common thread with Bruce Lee and Dana White, etc., is deep conviction that what they have or what they're noticing is a real talent. All right, so Dana is one of the most convicted people, people with the highest conviction ever, right? He thinks that I think he knew that he was building an empire or a potential empire from probably well before it was that. Bruce Lee just unwavering conviction when you see him speak, when you saw him speak. And Joe Rogan also, right? He's gotten many of his friends to start podcasts because he's so certain that it's something that is worthwhile, right? It provides a lot of value for society, right? So I guess this may be surprising or not to some of you. A big reason why I felt so excited to co-found CU was because I felt like so many of my gifts were not being recognized by anywhere else. So I was like, I need to help create something that allows me to show that my gifts are really valuable, right? And I know that there's so many other people that are in a similar position. And I think all of you know how much conviction I have in Civics Unplugged. I think that conviction is really infectious, right? And affects donors as well. So it's a great point, Josiah.
One other thing, building off of like Gary, your point, and also Josiah's point, is like money poured into media and how that influences demand for things. Because like my mind goes to the example of like Queen's Gambit and like how that's about chess, and now there was like a huge boom and like people wanting to play chess or like buying chess sets, and like now there's just a huge demand for that, and it almost like made it cool. So because like media has such a power to like mass influence a lot of people and it's like widely available to people, now like money being poured not directly into things but also into media can influence like previously overlooked talents or skills or like things of that nature.
That's a great point.
Anyone?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was just gonna see if anyone else wanted to hop in, so go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I do think that, yeah, there's a lot more than just money that influences what we see as a talent, but I also think that it was interesting how many of us talked about like marketable aspects of people's personalities or talents that they were using to actually make money, and how that is so important in like, I don't know, just being able to um like be successful by making money in your career, and like how you, even like personalities are being made into something that you can have a career because of just if you're funny or just like if you're relatable or whatever. I mean, obviously comedians too, but like blogs or whatever. So I think that is interesting.
Anyone have anything else to add before we move on to reflection? Cool. So I'm gonna copy the link of these notes and send them in the Zoom chat so you all can look over them, and once you have your reflection, feel free to shout it out. And I can go ahead and get started. I think that this conversation just made me realize how much talent is based on belief, like, and that belief is twofold. I think it starts with other people believing in you and validating your talents. Like, you're not going to realize that something is a talent really until society tells you that it's something that's valuable. And I think that for a lot of people that like starts when they're young. And then also with that, like, it comes with the belief in yourself. We've talked about self-fulfilling prophecy. Obviously, if you think you're not going to be good at something, you're probably not going to be if you keep that mindset. And so I just think that it's really important to, I mean, I know what CU has done for me a lot is just helped show me and validate so many of the talents that I had never even explored or considered of mine. And so I think that going forward, I really want to help with that, especially in the 2021 fellowship and everything else that we do in CU, helping validate other people's talents as well. Anyone have their reflection ready?
Sure, I can go for it. So I think that like I came into this conversation with a slightly slanted, like biased version against talent, just because my school is super into this mindset of like hard work over talent any day, and they like constantly push this idea. And so I came into it with like this like almost negative view of talent. But I think like Madison, what you were talking about in terms of like opportunity and that like like a theme that we were talking about, like how everyone does have a talent. It's just like, do they have the opportunity to develop it and like figure out what that talent is really important. And so that is just kind of like a mindset shift that I've had over the course of this conversation. And it's definitely something worth exploring a little bit more. And just another reason why I'm very grateful for CU in terms of like helping other people pursue their talents and figure out what that is and giving them opportunities to cultivate them and develop them more. So yeah.
Yeah, I think something that Rose and Julia said, Julia a little bit earlier on when we were talking about YouTubers, but Rose specifically, when she talked about personality traits, really struck me because I remember reading this article on like something along the lines of like Me Incorporated. And it's basically about how like you can like market yourself and make yourself, I guess, more profitable / palatable. And like aside the various implications that had, I think it's kind of like Maryam, I coming into this, I did also have like a negative skew when I thought of talent, but I think that just being yourself very cheesy, but just being yourself and realizing the various roadblocks that you had to overcome to be where you are today. I think that in and of itself is a talent. So I think I have more of an appreciation for the various skills that people possess and just the various positions that people are. Because even though it's not what is like hard defined as talent, it's something very impressive and it should be regarded as such.
I think at the end of the day, personally, talent comes down to desire to allow your natural aptitude at a certain activity to be recognized. I think that although your surroundings, your environment, your culture, your religion, and your personality are certainly going to affect how fast or how slow you meet your goal or have your talent recognized by yourself or others, I think that if you have a desire to do something that reveals that talent, you're going to do that as long as you maintain that desire.
Yeah, well, that makes me think about how all the pressures that make you not want to desire something that you're actually really good at. So I've had conversations with a few of the people on this call about how it's clear that they have an aptitude for community building, and like the feeling that it's unclear if that's a real career. It is. It's becoming more and more so. That really blocks people's own desire to recognize how valuable that skill is.
Yeah, and look, Gary, you brought up a good point where, you know, when we talk about talent here, that there seems to be, you know, some opinions around talent where it's a bit more on the negative side, and rightfully so, right? There's a lot of pressure on people to think that they should have a talent, and if they're not talented, they're not valuable. But you know, going back to that image that you posted, talent isn't something that's there or not. It's whether you have the right environment, whether you have the right audience, and whether you have the right support system. You're always going to find talent there. So it's not whether you have it or not. It's whether you're surrounding yourself with the right environment to showcase what you have. Because you know, just like going back to that first exercise where I think people were spilling, you know, like giving out one to three words about talent. I noticed there's a lot of things that show that pressured side, right? Some folks said it's overrated. Some folks said it's innate, gifted, or things like that. But it doesn't have to be like that at all.
Yeah, I'll build off of that. I think that you all really opened my eyes up to the kind of a wider lens on what we can consider talent. So even to that point of like, sometimes we all feel that pressure of like, oh no, wait, I'm not. I don't know what my inherent talent is. I haven't spent the time or the introspection, or maybe you're just in a funk to not know what your talent is. And then when we had that conversation around curiosity and some of these other, like we said, personality attributes just as being that itself. And then the example that's sticking in, that just will not get out of my brain, is apparently there's people online who just do target runs, and people, and millions of people watch them do that. I'm like, what the heck? So it's like anything can be done. That's like that. Like if you do it well and with purpose and with like joy and other stuff, you're like, holy shit, this is so cool. So so I really like that idea of like a wider lens on what talent can even be thought of as.
I've just been thinking about how we've talked about the connection between what society views as a talent and like the monetary value that talent could bring, and thinking like, is that something, a mindset that we should break out of, or are there talents that maybe we're overlooking because of that?
Yeah, I think also the word talent kind of grossed me out growing up. Like, it just makes you feel discouraged a little bit because like you can't think of what your talent is. But the more we talked about it and like how we talked about other people's talents and what we all consider talents, something like having a strong passion or desire for something like a relentless pursuit is a talent, I'm realizing more and more, and it differentiates you from the masses on that focus. And like, to Gary's point earlier, experience reveals talent. Like, that's such a motivating statement in the way that like experience, learning, growth is one of the most fulfilling aspects of life. And like through pushing others to never stop experiencing things, and just like not put yourself in a box of not being talented, it just kind of makes me realize that like people's passion and willingness to work at or for something is a huge part of what talent is.
Yeah, all these reflections have maybe think about, I guess to Tyler's point about like environment, like what environments, what kind of learning spaces and ecosystems allow for people to engage in play, engage in run experiments that are just like, that aren't associated with pure productivity, or at least ones that are like mandated by authority figures, so that you actually can uncover hidden talents. I think we live in such a like false urgent, like it's both like there's this false urgency to score like a certain score on like an AP test, and there's a lack of urgency to help people become more of themselves, like to realize their unique potential at a time where we need, especially the potential as it relates to civic passion and superpowers. So I guess I'm plugging Civics Unplugged here because we really encourage people to discover what they're uniquely good at as it relates to doing good for themselves and others.
I'm sorry. Do you want to go?
It'll be super quick. Yeah, just to elaborate on what Gary said, I 100% agree that Western culture's emphasis on talent is very, very, very misplaced. I think that it's counterintuitive, the things that we emphasize and value when it comes to talent. And I think that what we overlook in talent is just, borderline sinful.
Yeah, I was thinking back too, like, I don't know how many of you guys had this, but like talented and gifted programs in elementary/middle school, and how they're predicated upon how well you're able to score on a test when you're only like 8 years old. I think that kind of numeric or rigid definition of talent has been worked into us since really young. And I guess that's where my negative perception of the word talent came from as well. Just seeing how many people were excluded from these programs. If you weren't in tag, you were like, I guess in our extremely simple minds when we were younger, you're just not talented. If you're not in talented and gifted, I guess you're not talented and gifted, you know what I mean? So I guess definitely co-signing what Gary said, there needs to be a better education structure, especially with how we help cultivate student talents, because being able to score high on a test, I guess that's a talent, but it's not the only talent out there that's valuable.
Angel, you just highlighted something so good. I mean, especially in relation to what Gary was saying about how there's a lack of urgency for people to realize their unique potential. Like we create like I said, like these talent narratives, and we try and like push people into like boxes, which is just so bad. Does anyone have any reflections on the trek overall, especially if it was your first trek?
Very simple, but I have fun.
Tyler, Pratap?
Oh yeah, this is so cool. I have like practical applications like immediately tomorrow at work for how we're thinking about like our hiring practices for our startups and stuff like that. So I really appreciate y'all's thoughts and sharing this time with me.
Cool. If there's no other thoughts, then I guess we can go ahead and get wrapped up. But thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Tyler and Pratap, for joining us. Hope to see you again at a future trek.
Anytime, y'all.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Have a great rest of your night, everyone. Bye.
All right,
Good night,
bye.
guys.
Bye.